Appreciation for our great group of volunteers who make these events possible. Pete Berger, the Starfish Enterprise captain. Skip Arnold, he's not here tonight. Carol Collier, Carol is back there, she is. Jim Newman, Mary Kiltz, Kate West, Robin
Frogop,
thank you, is doing our taping tonight. And Ron Deeroff, he's not here, and I guess Kevin here is a volunteer, such as it is. I'm going to, before I introduce Kevin, we want to tell you how much we appreciate you being here tonight. Turning off your cell phone.
You don't want to turn it off. You never know, George.
This is what you should not do. A couple of interesting announcements. Well, we've got Kevin coming on board to help us design a paddle wheel vessel for the Apalachicola River and Bay. As irony would have it, we have a philanthropic contribution coming into the museum of an 80-foot paddle wheeler that is being gifted to the museum here in the near future. Wow. So it looks like we'll be having two boats.
Very good.
As that may be. And if we could only hook up to the internet, we could give you a video of the vessel. But you can go out on YouTube, those of you that are internet savvy, and do a search on the paddle wheel boat named Jean Mary. And I think you'll find it a very interesting video. That's J-E-A-N, and then 7 Mary, paddle wheel boat. And we'll be putting some of that on the Maritime Museum website in the very future. We think it may arrive in 90 to 120 days. It's got some maintenance to be done before it comes over. But segueing now, I want to briefly explain these forms. One of the things we want to do is to get feedback from a lot of people as to what you think would be a good design for a paddle wheel vessel. And so this is our endeavor. And you'll see the different options. We want you to rank each of these from 1 to 10 down the right-hand side about what you think would be good. And we've got things covering cruise offerings up the river, through the bays, out to St. Vincent Island, et cetera, et cetera. Cruise accommodations, bedding arrangements, cabin laboratory, cabin equipment, comfort options, sizing options. And of course, there's an estimated cost for those. Dinner accommodations and options, outings, and other amenities. And these are the kind of things that really help us, and especially Kevin, as we go through this process to determine what it is we want to build. And we plan to hold these forums on up the river basin. We had a public meeting, open house in Chattahoochee on Thursday night. We started to circulate some of this material. But with no further ado, I'm going to turn the helm over to Kevin here and let him tell you about it. I'm going to be the guy, Wizard of Oz, and stand behind the curtain.
Evening, everybody.
Evening.
As George said, my name is Kevin Kerwin. I'm a naval architect, and I've been involved in the design of probably 200 or 300 vessels, and a lot of commercial vessels at the moment. I've done a lot of yachts and naval vessels, patrol boats, and so forth. And this looks like quite an interesting challenge. In some of my own historical background, my great-grandfather had a foundry that made parts for steamboats on the river in St. Louis. So it's kind of an interesting circle around there. Let's start off with a little history of the area and steamboating on the river here. The steamboat era in the Chattahoochee River Basin began in 1827 to 1828 with a voyage of one called the Fanny from Apalachicola to Columbus, Georgia. In the 120 years that followed, over 200 boats would fly the river's waters. These transported people and cargoes of mostly timber and cotton, connecting the region to world markets And steamboats profoundly influenced the growth and development of the region, especially before there were any paved roads available. Steamboats played such a vital role in the economic life of the Chattahoochee Valley during the era that they were prominently featured on currency and on a recent postage stamp. That's the first slide. This is an example of one of the boats that you would typically see. This is the Fanny Fern. What you see here is a shallow draft hull with a pointy bow. It's got cargo that would be carried down on the main deck and passenger cabins on the upper deck. This might be a socializing area for the passengers, or it might be a crew area, and of course the wheelhouse up here. It generally had a boiler system right here with the smokestacks. It would send steam back to the engine room in the aft end here, and it worked very similar to a steam locomotive, where they would have a big cylinder that ran back and forth this way, and it turned a crank that made the paddle wheel go round and round. And then they've got a couple of rudders right under the aft end of the hull that direct the water flow into the paddle wheel. Next one. This is the steamboat Shamrock at Apalachicola Wharf, piled with cotton. As you can see, it was built upriver in 1864 in Columbus. Apparently quite a few boats were built up in Columbus. And they say it weighed 272 tons. I think that's probably the gross tonnage cargo volume rather than the weight of the vessel, but nevertheless, that's a common mistake. So, go ahead. This one is the Gertrude. Brings passenger, mail, cargo, grocery items, and merchandise. Typical. You can see a bunch of barrels on the cargo deck there, a bunch of people on it, everybody waving, lining the bank. Luxury accommodations were offered. These are cabins on each side, port and starboard, of the center eating area. And of course, stewards would attend and wait on all the passengers as they were eating at the tables. This one, I believe, is a 1880s era boat, and it was the luxurious way to go up and down the river. Next one. Typical of the larger ones, you may have seen the Robert E. Lee and the Natchez over in New Orleans. They've got a Creole Queen, and then the Delta Queen had some that ran up and down. I mean, what else? The Delta Queen? Yeah, the Delta Queen used to run up and down the Mississippi. There's starting to be cruises available on the Mississippi again. There's going to start up this year with a couple of new cruise lines. And the Robert E. Lee was a good example of that, of the big ones that used to carry all of the cotton from the plantations and people up and down the Mississippi. Next. The Rebecca Everingham was one that was built in Columbus. It was an example of the most luxurious steamships of the day on this river system that once plied these waters. It was named after Rebecca Bernard Everingham Wadley, the wife of Mr. William Morrill Wadley, who was a leading railroad and steamboat line executive in the South. This was built in Columbus, and it featured over 24 ornate staterooms and had a capacity of 120 passengers and nearly 1,000 bales of cotton. It had a short life, though. Only lasted from 1880 to 1884, and it operated between Columbus and Apalachicola as a vital link in the regional transportation network. One of the most famous steamboats of her time, she was destroyed by a cargo fire in the early morning hours of April 3rd, 1884, about 40 miles down below Columbus. Some of the cotton caught fire and quickly engulfed the vessel in flames. Back then they were all built out of wood, so they went up pretty quickly. And although the pilot immediately steered her toward the shore, at least a dozen people on board were hurt in the disaster, and within 30 minutes it burned to the waterline and quickly sank a short distance downstream. We've got some Rebecca slides.
Probably would go to the PDF.
Yes, let's go to the PDF. This is from a tour that was given back in 2009. Is this a replica?
Yes.
Okay, next slide. So, I don't know if you can read this, but this is a bit more information on it. It was powered by 2 steam engines fed by 16-foot-long wood-fired boilers. They would generally stop every day and pick up wood along the riverbank to fuel these things, utilizing steam under power, or under high pressure, which was 140 pounds per square inch. These engines were capable of moving the boat at a speed. Oh, we can't? Okay. They were capable of moving the boat at a speed of about 7 miles an hour. Steamboats use huge quantities of wood to keep their boilers heated, and as I said, they usually stop once a day to take on firewood. The steamboat moved along the river by means of the paddle wheel that is located at the stern. Some of them were side wheelers also, like you saw in the Robert E. Lee. These were perfect for operating in shallow waters since the wheel sat at the waterline. Paddle wheels featured a number of wooden buckets or paddles that could be easily replaced if they got damaged from hitting the bottom. The pilot steered the boat from the pilot house, which was located high on top of the vessel for the best view of the river. Steamboat chimneys, sometimes called smokestacks, carried away smoke and soot and created a draft of air that caused the fire in the furnace to burn at a high temperature. Though they served a practical purpose, towering smokestacks were considered important to the overall appearance of the steamboats. Steamboats such as the Effingham featured several decks, each with its own unique purpose. The main deck carried cargo and the ship's machinery. The boiler deck contained passenger cabins and a central dining room. The Texas deck contained cabins for some of the ship's crew. That was the top one up there. And the Hurricane deck was an open deck where passengers could stroll and relax. So this would be the Hurricane deck up here, the Texas deck in here. The boiler deck is, in this case, I think in the same area as the main deck. And the main deck, of course, is where all the cargo sits. Steamboats had flat hulls with shallow drafts. So they're often like 2 to 3 feet drafts, so they're very, very shallow. This enabled them to navigate rivers in periods of low water. Hulls were usually made of oak or other hardwoods since they were more resistant to shock and rot. Operating steamboats was an inexact science that demanded an experienced engineer. Maintaining the appropriate water levels and steam pressure were critical jobs that made all the more important by the crude measuring devices of the day. If the pressure relief valve didn't work, the whole thing blew up, and there were several incidents of that. The types of cargo that they carried through trade at the port of Apalachicola, the Rebecca Everingham helped connect the lower Chattahoochee River Valley to world markets. It transported a variety of cargo on their trips between Columbus and Apalachicola, including lumber, furniture, dry goods, tools, business supplies, salt, and seafood. Cotton, though, was by far the chief freight transported by the boat. The average load ranged between 400 and 700 bales gathered from farms throughout the Chattahoochee Valley. Okay. Back to the previous slideshow. Next one. This is a model of the Red Bluff. You can see how shallow the hull is. The black part of it is the part that goes underwater, right down here. And you can see some of the working elements of the boat. The boiler is in here with the smokestack. And these were so shallow that they often had a post here in the middle and a bunch of rigging to help keep the boat flat and keep it from warping and twisting. Next one. This is a typical post-Civil War steamboat at a landing. You can see they put a couple of gangplanks over, one on the bow and one amidships to carry cargo and cattle and so forth on board. It's got kind of a neat looking wheelhouse on it. Looks kind of like a nice little gazebo up here. Look how big the steering wheel is, if you can see it. Those things were like 12 feet in diameter. Next one. So this is another one that Next one. The Anna is another one that's typical of what used to run in this area. Kind of a smaller one with an open deck up here, and then you can see it's got some cabins on the main deck. This is more of an excursion boat than a cargo boat, though. So, next one. The Minnehaha is a relatively new steamboat that was built on Lake George in New York. This was built about 40 years ago, and it's an actual working paddle wheeler. And it's an excursion boat. You can see that it's got a bit of a different arrangement because the lower deck is just open here for people to look out, and it doesn't carry cargo, it just carries passengers. Next one. Oh, that's the end of it. So the end of this era came about around in the early 1950s. The George W. Miller was the last commercial steamboat to operate on the river. It was owned by local businessman Thurston Crawford, who brought the boat, which was originally a Mississippi River ferry, to Columbus to operate it as an excursion boat in 1939. Though this was popular during World War II to a large number of soldiers at Fort Benning, after the war, business quickly died off, and so it was used to transport lumber before being dismantled in the early 1950s. And the development of larger trucks and the interstate highway system probably had quite a lot to do with the eventual demise of all of these river steamboats. So we've got a new beginning that we're talking about, not as a cargo thing, but as an excursion vessel. And I'll let George talk more about that.
Any questions for Kevin?
Yes.
How green can you make this? I don't think you're going to be stopping for lumber every day.
No. No, we're thinking this is going to be diesel powered, but with possibly a large battery bank for operation during periods where you just want to sit and not run engines. There's a number of new green feature hybrid vessel type power systems that are being developed right now. We're going to start looking into some of those. Yeah.
What's the average width that you're looking at as far as how wide it is?
We're looking at about 25 feet of width.
How you gonna steer it?
It's going to have some rudders underneath the stern right forward of the paddle wheel. And thrusters in the bow.
Where Eric,
Yep.
most of those boats, as I understand it, the boiler was up in the bow area, and the shaft would run back to the stern area to turn the paddle wheel or the side wheels. Why was the boilers in the bow and not back where the action was?
Well, I think probably had to do with weight distribution. The boilers are fairly close to the center of buoyancy, just slightly forward of it. And the weight of the other driving machinery in the back end would tend to balance it out. If you put everything in the back end, when the boat was light, it would sit and bow up with a lot of trim, and then it would be too deep at the back end. So with these being such shallow draft, you have to be very careful about the weight balance in all conditions.
Running that distance, you lost a lot of energy.
Well, I don't think it ran on a shaft. I think they piped steam back to the engine room in the back end and fed a cylinder back there.
That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
I've got some plans here of 3 other steamboats that are in the back. You can take a look at them. They've got some of the details of the machinery and the arrangements and profiles and so forth. And one of them, the Thomas Edison, was actually built here in Apalachicola in 1904. So it's kind of interesting to look at. Yeah, way in the back.
I'm Gary Crumley. I've worked with George from time to time. The paddle wheelers that we're talking about here, I actually had the opportunity to take a look at 2 of them, inspect them, and get a chance to see them firsthand. And he's exactly right. As it comes to waiting in moments, that is the critical part of keeping your boat balanced, whether it's an aircraft carrier or a paddle wheeler. And the opportunity to set those mechanicals in places that made sense included a couple of very creative ways. One which is at the very back of the paddle wheel, which we found on a boat called the Annabelle E. up in Jacksonville recently. The other one that we found, the Jean Mary, is actually one centered with all the operating equipment in the center of of the boat as he described. So there are a couple different ways that you can quote skin a cat. Hope everybody likes the museum.
This was Gary's design, the layout of the museum. He also was the designer of the trellis works out on the dock.
I wanted to give George something for many, many months now, his firstborn son coming and all. These are for, if anybody's been to see the dancing girl down there, his salad bowl is 3.5 feet across and 2 feet deep. So I thought perhaps a spoon and a fork with the dancing girls and logo on them would be appropriate for his salad bowl in honor of his firstborn son. Congratulations, George.
Gary, turn around please for a minute.
For those of you who don't know, our education director, Augusta West, is one day overdue on our firstborn child. She couldn't make it tonight, but we're very excited about that. And interesting piece of personal history is that my grandfather met my grandmother on the John W. Callahan, where he was a boiler engineer. So this is a calling that goes well beyond. And I remember in my youth, my grandfather was fairly old when he got married, so I never knew him. But my father told me the stories of the paddlewheelers in the day, and his father told him. It's really quite an interesting history. And it's just a real pleasure to be in a position in life where we can work with a guy like Kevin here to design and build a boat made for the Apalachicola River. That's what we're doing. Go ahead.
Kevin and George, I'm so excited about this project. We've all, not all, but a few of us have talked about how wonderful that would be for many, many years. And I had the pleasure of designing the architecture and all the millwork and the interiors of this historic steamboat replica. And it was made, I'm going to say slippery rock or moss.
We're going to count on you, Lynn, to be involved in this.
I know, and we put all the fretwork and all the terrain and the chandeliers and did all the design for all of that. And it was such an honor to be part of it. Not the engineering, but everything else I did.
Just a few other points about this process. We are just getting started. And Kevin and I are going to spend a good portion of the day tomorrow advancing the initial design objectives. Most likely, we are going to build the boat either here in Apalachicola, if we can find an appropriate location near the water, or in Chattahoochee, and then bring in cranes to launch it. We haven't worked out all those details. We're going to expand the staff of the Maritime Museum and work with both volunteers and paid professionals. Kevin, he has a day job, so it keeps him pretty busy. He runs the engineering over at Eastern Shipbuilding.
Kind of busy with 300-foot supply boats, but
They're
this will
booked,
keep me busy on the weekends.
they're booked out about 4 or 5 years in advance. So, but he has good affiliations, and we're going to hire a managing engineer essentially to help in doing the project correctly. We will plan to have other visiting meetings as these plans progress. And this turnout tonight is just very gratifying because we're going to look to continue to get feedback from everyone in terms of the design. So as we go to the next stage where we've got the ship's lines drawn and the cabin configurations, we'll host another one of these public forums to bring more feedback into the process. And what we hope to do is restore riverboat travel all the way up to Columbus and all along the river basin. Yes.
Did y'all know they were building the dial rapids in Columbus?
Yes. Yeah, they're knocking out the mill dams to make it a whitewater course, which is very cool.
I've been up there a couple of times, and Jim Fornor, the river loggers, actually taking the wood out, and but they're going to have it the upstream dam. They'll be able to control the flow and have it anything from a family afternoon up to a whitewater rapid.
Right. Yeah,
40 billion bucks.
It's a pretty cool objective they've got going there. And the other thing I want, in case those of you that aren't aware, we're hosting a dinner out on the docks, and we're going to have a little live entertainment from Carrie and Walter, great acoustic, very talented artists. We'll have a little bar down at the end of the dock, and we'll be seating along the rail and at tables. So as we wrap up here, we're going to have everybody move out there and enjoy an evening on the docks. Fortunately, the rain moved off, and hopefully it will hold off long enough for us to have a great event. I would encourage everybody to check out the drawings on the table back here. If you have questions of Kevin or myself, or Gary, or any of the museum staff, please just come forth. We really look for your feedback. The public is making the design decisions on this because we want it to be successful. And some of the things that we see here are just preliminary. I mean, I'm sure everybody here, because you're here, is interested in taking a trip on a paddlewheeler. And in that regard, give us some feedback. We put some kind of pricing options in there in terms of what we think the small cabins would go for and the large cabins would go for. I mean, all this it's got to be an economic model that works with the last long term. In terms of turning these in, you can leave them on the back table. You can leave them at the gift shop when you head out. Either of those two options would be good. I think there's some extra pens in the gift shop. We didn't really bring enough scribing instruments, but and the comments and suggestions too on the bottom or the back. Write those in, and if you'd like to become more involved as we move into the engineering and the construction, we're going to be hiring welders. We're still looking at decisions about whether the hull is going to be fiberglass, aluminum, or steel, or wood.
Yay!
And once we finish the infrastructure,
Water jet cut live, but
get her flooded, we'll probably bring her out here on the T-head of the dock and do a lot of the finish work using the shop over here.
Do you have a targeted completion date?
Not going to go there.
We're still working on a targeted start date, which my guess is maybe 6 months, depending on how things go, and that we need to find a location and start the process of staffing up. We've got 6 really good, talented people on crew now. We've been building the little project boats here. We're restoring the 1890 home that my great-grandfather built right over here by the traffic light, the big white house. So that's going to take us offline for about 6 months. We're kind of moving from that, and this will be our next big project. So let's say ballpark October, November time frame, maybe? Yes?
Suggestion for you. As you know, probably the luxurious steamboat on the river of Rebecca Everingham. Columbus Historic Museum back in 2009 did an exhibit of the Rebecca Everingham with a lot of the real artifacts from the boat. I'd like to suggest maybe, I'm sure they'd be happy to lend it to you or exhibit here, and that was the greatest steamboat on the river.
Thank you, Bill. Yeah, we covered that a little bit earlier, and that's a great idea. And of course, we have a limited steamboat exhibit in these photographs here, too. Yes?
Quick question on the scale here. Is 1 being highly desirable or 10?
10 being, yeah, that's a good point of clarification. 10 is something that puts a higher weighting as desirable. If it's a really bad idea, put a 0. If it's something you really want, 10. And I guess I can go over this in a little bit more detail. On the cruise offerings, dinner cruises from 1 to 2 hours, my gut feels I don't think that's going to work. Because it's going to be
Pretty fast food.
Yeah, and we've done dinner cruises on the catamaran out here, and they are very sparsely attended. The overnight cruises in the local bay and in the local river and bay area, that would be a short stay type thing. 3 to 7 day passages upriver, Blountstown, Chattahoochee, and Columbus. And for those of you that don't know, we have a 120-acre campus of the Maritime Museum in Chattahoochee at the legendary gravel operations and steamboat landing there. And we hope to be opening that up sometime later this summer. And we will be implementing docks, and that will be one of our primary destinations. And, so 3 to 7 day passages, what we think are going to be the real opportunity. 3 to 7 day passages out to Dog Island, Little St. George, and St. Vincent. That's something that I think might also be a very cool option, is that we could ride the steamboat to those of you that have heard of Tahiti Beach on St. Vincent Island, pull up more, maybe 20 feet off the shore, depending on the water depth, and have kayaks and canoes that can go up to the shore and go exploring on the island. Same with Little St. George, same with Dog Island. Part of our design requirements is that it will be an inshore rated vessel, so we'll have pretty high freeboard for the wave action.
So no offshore poker games.
No offshore poker games, yes. And it's not a gambling boat. No, at least it's not our intention. There might be some gambling going on. One of the design ideas that in our preliminary discussions that Kevin brought to us was the use of spuds. And these are not potatoes to roast. Spuds, if you've seen these barges with the big pipes sticking through them that hold the barge in place, we've been we're evaluating the use of spuds. They would not be seen from the deck. They would be enclosed within the house.
Built into the corners of the deck house. And they're just like pilings that you can drop into the bottom of the water to hold the boat in place, and as the tide goes up and down, it will just ride up and down on the spuds, and it stabilizes it. So for example, if you stayed overnight and you were out on the water, you'd drop the spuds and the boat would just ride gently on the water, riding up and down on the spuds.
Instead of swinging on an anchor and having the anchor slide on you, that kind of thing. So we've also talked about using a jack-up type system, which Kevin is discouraging. But that we could lift it up enough to stabilize it so it wouldn't be rocking at all. Some people do. But these are things that we're looking at. Continuing with the cruise options, also passages to nearby towns via the intercoastal waterway. So over to Carabel, points west would be Port St. Joe, Panama City, etc. Cruise accommodations, different sizes of bedding. Cabin lavatories, showers, or baths. We're anticipating every cabin will have its own private shower or lavatory. So, cabin entertainment. It's hard to imagine anybody going out on a boat and want to watch TV. But, we got it there. So, stereo, internet, Wi-Fi. That's a pretty easy thing to do. Cabin comfort, HVAC. Obviously, I think. There we're going to do a chilled water system is probably the concept, so that there's not a lot of ducting. The ceiling fans, you'll see if you go check out the video of Jean Mary, it's got a fireplace in the main eating dining cabin. Cool. And little propane heaters. And by the way, I want to encourage everybody to go and check out Heritage. When we're out on the docks tonight, it's open. We've just got it ready. Within the next week or two, we're going to be starting our sale program with that. And I'm going to digress for just a minute. Heritage, some of you may recall when we first brought it in, we sailed it down from Massachusetts. And for a while we were doing join for $20 and sail as much as you want for free. And we've kind of transitioned away from that program as we brought the catamaran Starfish Enterprise in. Now what we're going to do with the Starfish, or the Heritage, is we're going to do cruises of a minimum of a day. So all our trips aboard Heritage will be an overnight trip, and for up to 6 passengers. There's bedding accommodations for 6 passengers, so you can go out and sail around and circumnavigate St. George Island. Run out into the Gulf. If you want to book it for multiple days, you can go coastal, running down to the west. There's a lot of beautiful out islands, St. Joe, Peninsula, et cetera, Cape San Blas. The price on that It's at 6 persons, it's $200 per person per night, or $1,200 for the boat, essentially. And we're going to look for the boat to be chartered. You're helping the Maritime Museum when you do that, but this is a test of what might be the high end of the market in terms of outings. We're going to see how that works. Now, we're still going to allow designated not-for-profit youth groups, be it scouting organizations or Boys and Girls Clubs. We'll be doing free day trips for them because we want to continue our mission of getting youth involved in that type of activity. And that's independent of the high-end trips. We will be doing catering and having a professional crew. And so check that out. Think about it. Within the next week or two, we'll have all that defined on the website and start to take reservations. And it's a trip of a lifetime, which that's a sweet boat to go sailing on. It's very stiff in big wind, and it's a really cool experience. But we still do the thing with the starfish. And another thing to be aware of is at the low end of the spectrum, but probably one of the most enjoyable, is the 8-day river trip that we do from Chattahoochee down to Apalachicola, which involves camping on the sandbars at night. And the cost of that is $50 a day per person. And we take the starfish and we load it up with refrigeration and freezers and gas grill and 600 gallons of water and a propane heater, so we got hot water showers. And for anybody who's ever wanted to see the river, and they're doing bonfires tonight, that is a very cool experience. We've already got a pretty good number of people committed on it. In the museum here, we've got a video from previous trips running, and one of our specially built recycled kayaks that we had manufactured. So we're trying to define a spectrum of travel options that will appeal to what we hope will be an increasing international community. As you've all heard, some of you may have heard about the designation last week of Apalachicola Chattahoochee River System as an outstanding waterway. And we hope to be part of helping it become a World Heritage Site that produces new forms of economic opportunity for the citizens that live along its shores. And that's what this project is about with the riverboat. That is what this project is about. And we want it to be an economically sustainable model. And so whether we go with a lot of small cabins so we can put a lot of people in, or if people want to do it as their honeymoon or anniversary experience, and have a high-end cabin, we want to hear your feedback on it. What do you think will get it? Not only what you want, but what you think others would want. I mean, it's a trip of a lifetime type of thing. It's the opportunity, and we want to attract an international audience, international customers. Bring those Chinese here, let them spend their money. We'll take you in, offset that balance of trade issue.
Bring our money back in.
Bring our money back, yeah. Bring those dollars back here and spend them in Apalachicola, in Chattahoochee, in Bluntstown, and everywhere up and down the river. We will. To finish this little survey thing, the dining accommodations, the room service is something that would be necessary. Group dining area, we're planning on that. We've been discussing what the sizing of that needs. If we have a 20 or 30 passenger vessel, probably have to serve meals. Not everybody's going to be able to sit at the same time and close, perhaps on the top of that, yes. We're thinking we want to have a gourmet dress-up meals in the evenings, and we have to plan that into our galley accommodations.
I could.
And then outings would be, do we want to have a powerboat launch for excursions while we're doing these trips? Canoes, kayaks, paddle boards, whatever. Amenities, high power optics for wildlife observation, telescope, naturalist interpreter as part of the crew. We're currently planning on a captain, mate, and a steward. And perhaps it'd be 3 to 4 crew as part of the vessel to make sure that we take care of everybody in high style. Yes?
Will you be accommodating handicapped passengers?
Yes. We accommodate handicap now on the Starfish, and yes, handicap passengers. There will be an elevator in the boat. Now, I really want to encourage everybody to check out the G. Marie. That is a really cool example of what can be done at the high end. There's an elevator on that vessel. There's an incredible galley. A lot of cool features. It's going to require some renovation work to get it back up to speed, but these are the kind of things we're thinking about. Yes, go ahead.
Where did that boat come from?
It was designed by Richard Hargrave. It was built in 1984, and it's going to be coming from the St. Augustine, Jacksonville area. It had a little problem. Gary did the original survey and inspection on this. Perhaps so. We're still doing our due diligence on it. We haven't accepted the gifts yet, but it looks like it's all going to come together. We want to make sure we don't get an albatross, a sinker. But it sunk in 6 feet of water, which caused a lot of damage. It was raised fairly quickly, but it has been ill-attended for about 4 years. So it's not in the best of shape right now. And
It's got potential, and if you have belief in the ability to raise things from the dead, it's possible. This one's going to be a terrific project.
Who knows Debbie Reynolds, movie star? Who else remembers Debbie Reynolds?
Eddie Fisher.
Eddie Fisher, Debbie Reynolds,
So,
Carrie Fisher.
It's Debbie Reynolds that purchased the boat, and her son Todd Fisher owns it.
Unsinkable Molly Brown?
That's right.
Well, it sunk. It was the sinkable Jean Marie, and it sure enough sunk. Go ahead.
Hey, what's the drivetrain on?
That's a 4-foot draft. Which is a drivetrain.
It's running on diesel, and it's got up on the front end. It's got the bow thrusters to help maneuver it.
It's a single stern wheel. Single stern wheel, and originally it was a steam-powered vessel.
But I mean, is it like a hydrostatic, or is it? I mean, what actually hooks the paddle wheel to the motor?
It's a hydraulic turbine.
Hydraulic.
Hydraulic turbine off of the diesel system. It's great questions. Any other questions?
I just have a question out of curiosity. Who's funding all this? I mean, is this something that the community does, or I mean, are you hoping for?
I'm funding it.
Oh, you're funding it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's through I formed a 501c3 foundation back in 2006, which has been very well funded, and that along with the museum, so there will be a grant of funds from the foundation to the museum, and it will be a museum project.
Okay. Just curious.
There will be people involved.
What makes this kind of thing happen, it's more than just money, a lot more. It's interest, it's volunteers, it's support, it's enthusiasm, it's you putting on here what your thoughts are. I mean, it takes a community of involvement, and this tonight is really very energizing. I'll segue to Pete. I mean, Pete is a retired Arthur Young management consultant, flyer, and Coast Guard certified 100-ton captain. And he came by the museum a year and a half ago or something around those lines and just said, I want to be part of this. And that's cool because I get to drive the boat around, you know. But he's taken a lot further than that. He's helped us with our management plan. We collaborate regularly on insurance and operations procedures. His leadership role in that regard and helping to define the content of our environmental education. Back here, Wes, certified reading guide, also a captain, has recently, just this past week, put together an incredible field guide that incorporates photographs and dialogue on the keystone species that you'll observe and ties it to the river route. Wes is working for poverty wages and living in the old house over here and helping us out. I mean, a lot of it is just the enthusiasm of people that see a mission and see a chance to define what the future is that help this go. And that's what we really want to reach out to in these follow-up meetings that we'll have. Also, if we've not got your email address, if you're not getting our newsletter already, please be sure and write your email address on this. Augusta, who's unfortunately not here tonight, does a regular, we do a monthly newsletter, and then we do announcements on all these type of venues. And that's how we keep in touch with people, is through email. And little bit of advertising, but mostly through email, and just continue to stay in tune, stay in touch. I think we'll probably find ourselves back here in a month or two, maybe 6 weeks, we'll say, but we've got preliminary engineering drawings. And at that point, that's when we really get down to the nitty-gritty of how this is going to work. We're going to go through an economic model evaluation. I was a CPA for 20 years, kind of like Pete, management consulting and ran some businesses. But the key thing is to make it something that will work, that will draw people from all across the globe to come to Apalachicola and help define a new economy. There was a time in the 1800s when Apalachicola was an international town. You may have heard of that. I mean, we had consulates from France, Great Britain here located. It was populated by an international community. It was a lot different in those days. And when railroads and highways came about, a lot of that went away. But this is an opportunity to redefine the future, and your involvement, your presence here tonight is going a long way to make that happen. So join us for a Low Country Bowl. I think we'll be serving out here directly, and just give us your feedback, and thank you so much for being a part of this tonight.
One last point, I'm with Mayport's Waterfront Partnership in Jacksonville, Florida. And that's how I got to meet George and start working with him 5 years ago. We've done some great projects together, and for those who may not know it, next weekend Mayport is celebrating its 450th birthday.
Wow.
So 450 years, French came, we had Jean Ribaud come and create Mayport from the River of May, and we'll be celebrating our heritage next Saturday. If you have the means to come and visit our village, I highly recommend it. You'll love the place. It's beautiful. And we will be restoring our shrimping village. We have defeated the cruise ship initiative. We are getting our property back from the Port Authority. So even the smallest, tiniest little idea can finally grow to be something special. And that's what George has here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get some chow.